Mr. Brown, we at the Institute for the Preservation of Culinary Heritage and Authenticity take food very seriously. That said, I'm sure you can appreciate this invitation is not given lightly. There are those on the selection committee who feel that you are not institution material.
Oh, I assure you, Mr. Avery, I've been in and out of institutions my entire life.
Well, I dare say that had it not been for the untimely passing of Mr. Yorick.
Poor Yorick.
You knew him?
Not very well.
He's a fine man. His passing has left an opening, but your acceptance is far from a fait accompli. Here's your charge. The annual Commodore's Banquet is in 3 days. This year's theme is Moonlight on the Potomac, Land and Sea, 1783. You will be responsible for creating an authentic, historically accurate, fruit-based dessert.
Oh, that's just fine, Mr. Avery. I got the pie skills to pay the bills.
You do know that the Commodore has written several award-winning volumes on pie?
Pie? Did I say pie? I'm sorry, I meant cobbler. Cobbler.
Oh.
Hey now, in the rock, paper, and scissors of the culinary world, cobbler beats pie every time. It's the ultimate fruit delivery device, and although its roots are very firmly set in the past, cobblering is a method for modern living.
Well, I may periodically stop by to check on your progress from time to time. Good luck, Mr. Brown.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Avery, but I don't need luck. I've got... So what do we actually know about cobbler? Well, we know that cobbler was born of English plum pudding, and we know that it's called cobbler because the top of the finished dough resembles cobblestones. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Actually, it's called cobbler because it's hastily assembled. It's cobbled together.
We also know that once the cobbler concept reached the American shores, it diversified and spread like a virus on steroids. Deb, what's a nutritional anthropologist like you doing in a place like this?
Shh, I'm doing research. Do you mind?
Oh,
so what do you have, sir?
Oh, well, I was thinking about cobbler.
Well, we have Brown Betty.
Who's she?
That's baked fruit with layers of buttered breadcrumbs.
Okay, what's a buckle?
That's fruit cooked with yellow cake batter.
Crisp?
Oh, that is fruit topped with the mixture of butter, sugar, flour, and nuts or oats. It's known as a crumble in England.
And yet these are all still cobblers. Okay, I ask about the grunt.
Love grunt. That is fruit topped with biscuit dough and cooked on top of the stove to create a dumpling-like texture. It's called grunt because that's the sound it makes when it cooks.
Very charming. What about a pandowdy?
That's cobbler in which the dough is pressed into the fruit, creating an uneven or dowdy appearance. Keep your shirt on, hell, I'll be right there. So what will you have?
Can I have just a minute to consider my order?
Whatever.
Wow, she didn't mention that there was surly tart on today's menu. Surly. So all of those things that she gave in that lovely recitation are all technically cobblers, which means that we could consider just about any device containing cooked fruit and dough that's not a pie to be a cobbler. Now, where I grew up, a cobbler is usually a very deep dish application with layers of hot fruit interspersed amongst these kind of thick layers of crust. And the crust is composed of a dough that's kind of half pie dough and half biscuit. And well, let's just blow this joint. Go make some. Place 9.5 ounces of all-purpose flour in the work bowl of your food processor, along with 1 ounce, it's about 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of freshly grated lime zest, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. And just pulse that 3 or 4 times to combine. Next up, the fats. 4.5 ounces of unsalted butter and 1.5 ounces of lard. That's right, good old-fashioned pig fat. Very, very useful in pastries. Now, these should all be cut into little bitty cubes, and those cubes must be well chilled. Why chilled? Well, hey, look, it's our old friends, Tender and Flaky. Feisty little boogers, aren't they? You know, they were probably attracted by the fact that it looks like we're making pie dough here. And if we were, we would want to integrate both tenderness and flakiness. Tenderness, of course, comes from using a warm or melted fat that can ooze throughout the dough. And flakiness comes from using a cold fat that remains in solid sheets as you roll it out. Now, since we're making cobbler, I just don't care that much about tenderness. I really want good, solid flake structure, which is why I'm using chilled fats. And I want flavor, which is why I'm using a combination of lard and butter. Hey, have you guys seen my neighbor's new dog? I guess they have. Now just pulse this a few times or until the mixture starts to get crumbly and starts to kind of climb up the side of the bowl, just like that. That is perfect. Now it's time to add water. And we only want to add ice water because, of course, we want to keep this fat solid. How much? Well, it could be as little as 1 tablespoon, could be as much as 3. It depends on the moisture in the air, the moisture in the flour, moisture in the butter. It depends. But regardless of how much we use, I always add with a spritzer, because a spritzer will always evenly distribute the water, and that will always beat just pouring it in. So we spritz the surface, and we process. And we do this as briefly as possible. Move that crumbly mess into a zip-top bag and just shape it into a disc about yay by yay. And then tuck this into the refrigerator for at least half an hour. That'll give time for the flour granules to soak up some of the water, and it'll give us time to hunt some fruit. If you want to know what fruits make for good cobblers, you have only to check out the preserve section of your local Megamart. That's because the berries and stone fruits that are so popular with preservists contain reasonably high amounts of pectin. Now, that's a water-soluble polysaccharide capable of creating a kind of gel when cooked in a slightly acidic aqueous solution. But more on that later. Now, there is one cobbler accomplice that doesn't seem to be represented here. Excuse me.
Rhubarb, get your fresh rhubarb, the reddest fruit in town.
Excuse me, isn't rhubarb in the same botanical family as buckwheat and sorrel, and therefore, in fact, a vegetable?
Yeah, sure, whatever. Makes a killer pie, though. I mean, delicious. Try some.
Maybe in a minute. You know, rhubarb, which in Latin roughly translates to root of the barbarians, was originally used as a medicinal product, hepatic stimulant, in fact, until about the 18th century when it finally became a culinary ingredient. Why the long wait? Oh, I don't know. Could it be because rhubarb is poison?
Only if you eat it.
Well, in this case, the reapery device there comes in the form of oxalic acid, which besides being a flavorant is also a darn good bleach and rust remover.
Oxalic acid. It's one of my favorites. Right up there with hemlock and old Three's Company reruns. Try some.
Oh, what the heck.
Another clueless pedestrian lured in by the ruby-hued stalk of doom.
You know, actually, all the poison's in the leaves. That just really tastes lousy, raw.
Yeah, well, can't blame a wraith for trying.
Suppose not.
See you next week. Just kidding. Or am I?
Look for the best ruby red rhubarb in your Megamart starting sometime in late winter through the spring. You always want the stalks to be celery crisp. They'll have better flavor that way and as bright red as you can get them. The rest of the year, when this isn't in season, you will be able to buy hot house rhubarb, which is easily recognizable by the fact that it is not as bright red. It is pink, but it is still tasty. It is also the stuff that is used in the frozen variety of rhubarb. For the fruit filling, combine 1 cup of sugar with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Then grab yourself 1 pound of rhubarb, that's about 3 large ribs, and cut it into 1/2-inch pieces. Since it's loaded with tannins and phenols, rhubarb is mighty astringent stuff, but just as aromatic bitters can bring an otherwise bland cocktail to life, rhubarb can bring a new sparkle to a wide range of fruits and vegetables. Although strawberries are the most famous rhubarb mates, being a southern boy, I like peaches better. 3 of them. About 1 pound, I'd say. Sorry, just cut those in half, remove the pits, and carefully, of course, and cut into small wedges thusly. Now that so many of the cell walls have been damaged, these peaches will oxidize quickly and turn brown. And in this case, brown doesn't taste good. So we will add 1 tablespoon of fresh squeezed lime juice to the mix. There's another reason for the acid. Let's say for a moment that these sponges are the cells inside our peaches. Now, when they are raw, very, very firm. The cell walls are doing their job of keeping some stuff out, other stuff in. But by applying heat and moisture, we can soften this structure to the point where it's very, very tender, and water and juices and flavors and things move through the cells out into the surrounding cooking water, which is what makes cobbler sauce possible. The danger, of course, is in overcooking this structure to the point that it just turns